Today's show is sponsored by Supreme Whiskey Stones, an LEO business specializing in the best whiskey accessories to protect and serve your favorite pours. From whiskey stones to customer laser-etched glassware, they take pride in what they do and love making their customers happy. Check them out on Instagram at Supreme Whiskey Stones, at supremewhiskeystones.com, or through the various military and first responder organizations they sponsor. Cheers.
Because it's not the real Colonel.
No, he was a private in the Army, but he...
he... No, but I'm saying it's not like if the Kentucky Colonels are real.
Yes.
What are the Tennessee Colonels? It's like a wannabe Colonel?
You know, it's back in the old days, it was a honor bestowed on you literally by your neighbors.
Oh, I'm just giving you help for being from Tennessee. That's it. That's all.
Oh, man, went right over my head. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards. I do not have Zeke Baker with me here, but I have someone even better, Lee Kennedy from Leiper's Fork. And together, because he is a dad drinking bourbon, we make the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us a part of your day. And I do have to tell you, I am sitting in Leiper's Fork, Tennessee. There's 27 acres. It is picture perfect. Every single house I drive by on my drive here, whenever I come out here, I wish I could live in. This is a beautiful, beautiful property, a beautiful 2,500 square foot log cabin that I'm actually in right now, along with the 5,000 square foot distillery part. This has to be one of the most gorgeous distilleries I have ever been to. It's one of my favorite ones to come to. And nice wood everywhere. It looks farmy and it looks down home country and it's like country chic. But I am sitting with owner, proprietor, distiller Lee Kennedy. Thank you very much for joining me.
Absolutely, John. Thank you for having me on. And I'm very humbled by your words. I mean, because those were some big statements you were making there, but I truly appreciate that.
No, I mean, it's 100% the truth. I think we were talking about horse racing before we got on.
Yeah.
And just the different tracks that we've been to and how Keeneland's so beautiful. And April, who works here, who's a woman of many talents and does a bunch of things, but also happens to be a great Kentuckian.
Yep.
We were talking about horse racing with her and how beautiful Keeneland is. I think Kentucky and Woodford Reserve. Yep. Woodford is one of my favorite distilleries to go to, just the beauty of it.
Yes.
You're going to have like the Pimlicos that are really the factory distilleries. Mm-hmm. The Preakness might run there. It looks great one day of the year. But, this is one of those distilleries. It's just a showcase distillery. It's gorgeous.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we tried to, we want to reflect Tennessee, and we tried to do that in our architecture. And, we try to, everything we do here is very traditional, from the way we design architecturally our buildings to the way we design and produce our whiskey. We don't, we're trying to stay true to the roots of Tennessee and to distilling as well.
So you actually, it's so beautiful in your distillery that you hold events out there constantly. Our friend Andy from Eat Y'all, he comes out and does some supper things with you all, and you do a great benefit out here every year.
Yes.
I missed last year's, but I can't wait to have that come back again.
We'd love to have you for that. Absolutely. That's the Bourbon Bash. We do that in the fall every year. Usually it's the last weekend of October. This year it's closer to Veterans Day, so 1st of November. But great event that all the proceeds benefit the Green Beret Foundation. A lot of vets here. We have 7 distilleries from Kentucky that come down, as well as 7 distilleries from Tennessee that are here represented. Set up tasting stations. One of the big boys a couple of years ago debuted at Expression here. And then we have live music, auctions, and things like that. So it's a great event.
There's always something going on down here.
Yeah, there is. Absolutely.
In this distillery, it's actually a labor of love, right? Mm-hmm. Because you like distilling at a young age, and you had an interest in it, at least from everything I know about you. Yeah. But this was one of those things where you couldn't distill here in Williamson County, and this was something that we've talked about on other shows. Legislature passed it actually went county by county. So before then, you really only had Moore with Jack Daniels, Coffee with Dickel, and you had Lincoln with Pritchard's.
Yeah.
They had to go county by county and say, all right, this county's okay to distill now. This one's okay to distill.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's at an early age, I was captivated by distillation. I don't know why. When I was 15, going on 16, built a little still out of a 5-gallon pressure cooker and some copper condensing line from Home Depot, 5-gallon bucket, and a copy of the Foxfire book. Had some old archaic knowledge in there and some old mash bills and procedures, and knew just enough to be dangerous. Didn't know anything of what I was doing. For some reason, I was fascinated by that, probably too originally from a cultural heritage standpoint. I'm a Scotch-Irish guy in the South, Tennessee, Kentucky, anywhere in the Southern Appalachians. Distilling was part of the fabric of communities, and so that just captivated me at a really early age, and I kind of carried that on after college.
It's amazing, right? Because everything I've read about you, it's that moonshining is a lost art chapter of the Foxfire book. And it's amazing how one chapter could change your life. Right?
Hey, that sounds, I've never thought about that, but it's had a family friend who actually gave me that book, and it really did. I wouldn't be sitting here today, arguably, if it wasn't for that chapter in that book. But I loved a lot of the history behind it, as well as taking grains and converting them into flammable consumables. I love the history behind it as well.
It's okay. I know you're worried about the sound, but that just proves everybody who's listening is going to know your distillery is a hop place, right? It's good. It adds to it.
Yeah, we're having a good Tuesday. So yeah.
If this many people are coming in and out of here on a Tuesday, and I'll tell you guys, for those of you that have gone on the tour, I went on a tour with your father-in-law, John, because you and your wonderful wife, Lindley, you guys run this place together. Yeah. John, your father-in-law, is here on Sundays giving tours. If you ever want to come down and see him.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful tour. You have a very nice tasting room.
Thank you.
So if I were to describe this log cabin, you got the business offices up top.
Yeah.
On the bottom half, you have this kind of atrium area, and then you have the retail side on one side of the log cabin.
Yes.
On the other side of the log cabin, you have a nice tasting room with a great bar. And anybody who is going to a distillery wants to know that you can actually sit down. There are places to sit after the tour, relax, go through everything you have. But I digress. I don't want to get too...
No, that's okay.
But, you were distilling as a teen, and then all of a sudden, 2009, you guys could distill here.
Yes.
But it was a long process to when you guys actually got going and opened to the public in July of 2016, right?
Sure, absolutely. That was an arduous process getting through our local approval. If you're creating a distillery, the first thing you need to do before you talk to the feds or the state is have local approval. And so that actually took us 3 years and about 4 public hearings. We actually had to create a new law for the county. I mean, Tennessee has that. We were just talking about the long, rich history with distillation. In 1850, there were 10 distilleries in Williamson County, and people forget, a lot of that history. One was just, 3 miles up the road. So, yes, there was actually a law against it. So we had to go in and kind of create a new law to allow us to operate, and that was 3 years of a lesson in patience. But at the other end, once we got through, ran that gauntlet, so to speak, and got on the other end, we have a really good relationship with our county and also with our local Convention and Visitors Bureau. So it was a long process, but it was one that you don't mind red tape once you're through it.
It's one of those things where you look back, especially being in the liquor business, you could actually sip on something, have a smile on your face, and say, I got through it.
Absolutely. And then, once you get on that other side of it, then there's a whole nother, list of issues you deal with as a distiller and a new distillery as well.
Oh, and now you're actually dealing with how do I run a business and keep it. You don't want to be in the red. Then you want to put everything red behind you at that point.
And we're all family owned here, so it's when the tourists we were talking about downstairs, they're helping pay the bills while we've got whiskey aging on wood. So it softens the blow, and so we tell folks right now we're kind of a tourist venue that gives tours and happens to make a little whiskey. Eventually, once we get all of our whiskey aged, we want to be a regional brand distillery that happens to give tours and tasting. So the focus will kind of change as that whiskey comes online.
And if we talk about the products that you have out right now, you have the Colonel Hunters and maybe a little bit of marketing, but in your case, it's true. Colonel Henry Hunter is actually buried on this property, as the lore tells us, or at least your father-in-law told me.
Well, I'll have to talk to John about that. He's buried about 700 yards from the distillery as the crow flies.
So, it's close enough.
Yeah,
right?
it's close enough.
It's right by the creek.
He actually, this property, I bought this property back in the late 90s from his fifth great granddaughter. So my mom's side of the family, the Locke side, they've been in Hillsborough, Leiper's Fort, whatever you want to call it, since about 1805. So I love the history behind this area, but I actually bought this property from Colonel Hunter's fifth great granddaughter. He came here from North Carolina, like a lot of Scotch Irishmen did, went down to New Orleans, fought the British with General Jackson, came back here and became a local planter and distiller here in Leiper's Fort. So his son John actually built the house next to us where the distillery sits. So we feel like his spirit's here, and he kind of represents what it means to be a true volunteer in a Tennessee. And so him being a distiller, when we were bringing that brand to existence, we did that kind of as a tip of the hat to him and those early Williamson County distillers.
So Colonel Hunter, he was a private in the Army. He wasn't an actual colonel. He was an honorary colonel.
Yes, later in life, yeah.
But did he distill whiskey?
He had a piece of property on Old Highway 96 called the Distillery Tract. He made whiskey there, probably back in the 1830s, 1840s time period. But of course, back then, most farms had a still on it. There were distilleries changed over time as the Industrial Revolution came along. So it was a small operation, yes.
But just like you're sitting here, you have all your fingers, you have all your toes. You didn't blow yourself up with that little 5-gallon still. Right?
No, the very first distillate that came off of it, we kind of had a draw sticks to see who was going to try the first one, but that was just a beginning of a passion kind of being cultivated and a seed being sown. Really learned I was just fascinated at that point, trying to do something, not really knowing. There was no internet, so there was not a lot of literature on it. And, until recently, the only way to really learn how to distill was to do it. Unless you had a resource that worked at a distillery or a moonshine uncle or something like that, there's really no other way to learn it back in 20 years ago than to just try it.
So before you then came here, did you go meet with people and go to
absolutely. Once I graduated, I moved to back to Williamson County after going to Auburn. Me and Carter up at Pennington share that. But anyway, so moved back here and bought a little barn still, a bigger barn still, I guess, and it was a major passion and hobby of mine. So once I got into it commercially, we actually leaned on Kentucky for a lot of resources. Went up and ran, worked at distilleries up there. We spent a week out of a month up with a Wilderness Trail Distillery up in Danville, Kentucky.
They're doing awesome.
Oh yeah, man. They're the whiskey wizards. They know so much about the science. So a lot of they tell folks, this is hillbilly chemistry. So the same principles of distillation that are going on in a 1-gallon pot sitting on your stove is also going on in a 1,000-gallon pot sitting in a commercial distillery. It's just it's a learning curve on the equipment and how to do things at a professional level with consistency and things like that. So you really need those guys getting going for some direction. And luckily we found them and have formed a really nice partnerp. And
they have a big release coming out in April.
Yeah,
too,
they do.
By the way, so
absolutely.
Everybody, stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So we lean on them for a lot. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah,
that's awesome. So you have the Colonel Hunters, which while your stuff is resting,
sure,
that is a sourced product.
Yes.
We don't necessarily need to say where. And then you have your own stuff. I mean, you've really only been open.
Yeah,
this is the third year.
Actually, you're sitting here, so it'll be 3 years in April when we started distilling. So we put back our first barrel, I want to say about the middle of April. I should know it off the top of my head. Made a little rye first. So right now we're making about close to 550 barrels a year. Everything's going into 53-gallon. I'm hell-bent on that. 99% of our capacity is going back on wood, and we're sitting on it. We've got right now under our belt, we've got about 853-gallon barrels. Most of that is Tennessee whiskey and bourbon. So yeah, we're committed to. We have the Colonel Hunters. We do limitedly. We only do about 6,000 bottles of that a year. But even,
that's crazy too, especially how
it's a 10-year-old,
especially because of all the places that you see it in Nashville.
Yes,
it just feels, and it's one of those local brands that probably feels like it's bigger.
It's not,
And when you go to the store and you're like, oh, there's Leiper's Fork, and it's one of those things that you think more people.
Yes, absolutely.
But right now you're pretty much Tennessee, right?
Yeah, I'm not Tennessee. We're Middle Tennessee. I mean, we kind of really have to. It's in our best interest to sell 90% of that whiskey is sold out of our retail store, where our margins are better, and that's because of our state law lets us do that. But anyway, so the Colonel Hunters has been really good for us to fund a lot of the operations of putting our own whiskey back, and that's a business model a lot of people follow, and we have the white whiskeys as well. As
your stuff is actually aging, you actually put distillate out. It's the white whiskeys, but are those aged at all, or do you just take them right from the still?
We pass them through the barrel per federal law. We have to do that, but I mean, we use those more as a historical kind of talking point, and from an education standpoint, because bourbons and Tennessee whiskeys are so barrel forward. 65% of the profile is coming out of that barrel. A lot of times what's going on with the delicacy of the grains gets lost or masked by the barrel. So as a distiller, we have two white whiskeys. One is a rye based, and then the other one is a corn based Tennessee whiskey. Same percentages, just change the grain bills around. So consumers can come in. We walk them through a tasting of white whiskey, and they can actually taste the difference. Where that rye is spicy on the front, and the finish is a little cleaner. When they go to that corn base, you've got really soft palate with a more lingering finish. You can really see what's going on, what the grain does to those different distillates. It's really interesting to see.
One of my favorite parts of your tour, and I think you guys do this really, really well, opposed to, and it's not a comparison, right? But
sure.
You guys have really planned it out well, and you tell a story during your tasting.
Yes.
Where some people were like, hey, this is one offering we have, this is another offering we have.
Sure.
It's almost like a setup.
Yes.
Because there were some newbies there, there were some spouses, and it doesn't matter husband or wife, because either one of them could have been the primary whiskey drinker in 2019, but it's I took the tour. I actually took my daughter here. This was her first distillery tour. My wife was gone, obviously, of course, for the weekend, and I sent pictures. I'm like, hey, Sophia and I are down at Leiper's Fork just hanging out. But the tasting was, as you set it up, you go from white to the brown whiskey, and it's like
a progression.
It is a progression, and as people were having the white dog, they were kind of like, I don't really like this, or this isn't what I like.
Yes, right.
And I'm just sitting there, and you and I were having a conversation, before we started recording.
Yeah.
That whenever we go on a tour, I never like to talk because I never like to be that guy. Right. So I'm just sitting there, kind of laughing in my head.
Yeah, sure.
And the person sitting next to me, I'm like, don't worry, they have a plan. Like, I could tell just by looking at the sheet.
They were worried.
Because you build up to the Colonel Hunters.
Yes.
And then when people finally got to the Colonel Hunters, they were like, oh, I really like this.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of consumer education. You're actually showing them what that barrel does to that distillate over time,
Well, that's great marketing there, too, because they're going and buying the Colonel Hunters when it's done.
But, man, it's amazing how many ladies like our white rye. And it works very well in a cocktail. We do some nice cocktails here. But, yes, you're right about that.
Well, and then I also pointed out to the person sitting next to me, not loud enough where I was like a know-it-all, but I'm like,
sure,
hey, eventually those two that you had in the beginning are going to be like the other one. Yeah. I was like, just give it some time. Come back.
Right.
So speaking of that, they've been sitting there for 3 years now. What is the plan then for what your whiskeys are going to be in the future?
Of those 500 barrels a year, about 20 to 30 of those per year are rye, and the rest, and the difference of that is equally between Tennessee whiskey and bourbon. When I got into this, I wasn't going to do Tennessee whiskey. I was only going to do a Tennessee bourbon. And some of our friends in Kentucky said, you would be doing yourself a disservice not doing a Tennessee whiskey. You need to do that because you can make bourbon in all 50 states. A lot of people don't believe that, but obviously it's true. but you can only make Tennessee whiskey in one. So we would be doing ourselves a disservice. And I love the traditions behind both of them. What our friends in Kentucky wanted us to do was take our bourbon grain bill and literally just run it through the sugar maple charcoal and do. That was the only difference maker between the two. And we didn't do that. We changed the grain bill on our bourbon from our Tennessee whiskey for various reasons. But we played with that, toyed with that at the beginning.
Well, we could always just do a barrel for fun and see what happens.
Hey, I'm down with that. Absolutely.
It's just, all you got to do is run it.
Experimentation.
Put a little bit of charcoal there. You could just have it touch some charcoal, and then all of a sudden, hey, it was filtered. Yeah.
Well, we tried on our Tennessee whiskey, our Lincoln County process. We try to do it justice. We make our own sugar maple charcoal. We get our local sugar maple from right around the corner, about 4 miles, Fox's Mill. So we burn our own charcoal here. We run it. It's not 13 feet, but it's about 5 feet. And it's,
no, but I've seen it. I mean, you guys build it up just like you should, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, and we do it justice. We drip it through there instead of just running it fast. Like if we're going to do a Tennessee whiskey, we at least want to do justice. We feel like to that Lincoln County process.
No, that's fair. So when all is said and done, you all are going to have a rye, a bourbon, and a Tennessee whiskey. Yes,
yeah. And in equal amounts, Tennessee whiskey and bourbon. This past year, we put back close to 400 barrels. First year, we only put back about 85. We'll release 30 barrels worth of rye late fourth quarter this year. That whiskey will almost be 4 years old. We feel comfortable enough to release it. We can stand behind it, that rye, late fourth quarter. Then next year, fourth quarter, we'll come out with our Tennessee whiskey, about 50 to 70 barrels. And then we start getting into some bigger production after that.
So is your goal, because then you'd have some rye would start to come out at 3 years.
Yes.
You would have bourbon
at 5. I'm 5. Committed to 5 on bourbon and 4 on Tennessee whiskey.
And also with the mellowing could kind of take off some of that stuff of anybody that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of guys in the industry would say there's but a lot happens in the barrel between year 3 and 4, especially on a corn-based distillate. A lot of that green wood starts to go away. To me, it's easier to tell the difference between a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old versus a 4-year-old and say a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So really trying to hit that 4-year-old mark on our Tennessee whiskey with that corn-based distillate.
Well, and anybody that asks, right, there's a reason why Bottle and Bond was 4 years.
Well, absolutely.
So it just kind of makes sense.
No doubt. We talk about that all the time. Yeah.
Now, you guys, the way you're sitting here, if you think it's a barn.
Yeah.
It's a very, very nice
It's a glorified barn. Yeah.
It's a very gorgeous barn out there. Yeah. Are you aging everything out there, or are you putting your stuff someplace else?
So we have an agreement with another large distillery south of us. So we have about 750 barrels that sit off premises. And then, so our plan is to start our barrel house construction. We're in the design phase right now, getting some funding together. So we'll start our barrel house, rick house, probably early to midsummer. So we're in that first rick house will hold about 5,000 barrels. So right now we have most of our babies off site. So, yeah. I mean,
is that tough?
It's
like an empty nester. You're an empty nester right now.
I mean, we keep all those first barrels we keep those on site. So we have probably about 100 barrels on site. The rest of them, we feel comfortable having them off site. And really, it's a necessity. I think a lot of guys in the industry, new guys right now in the guild and things like that, a lot of us are running into the same problem. There's a storage issue. And, it's kind of just figuring it out. Everybody figures it out differently.
Before you got into the distillery, you did real estate and construction, didn't you?
Actually, that was my brother. Well, my first job was an estimator in commercial construction. So I get construction. And then
somebody has an article that's linked to your website that's telling
my brother he's a contractor that built this entire place besides his cabin.
So you have a deal then. You have to go through him, but he'll probably give you the friends and family discount?
Absolutely. And he's a part owner in the distillery. So he has an incentive to cut me a break.
Can we just do something maybe like the three of us where we just build rick houses someplace on buy
man,
cheap land.
There's been this conversation we're having right now. There's been other people having this recently around the state. That's definitely something that a lot of guys in the industry would welcome, probably. Yeah.
We could probably get it done, like I could do
There's nothing money won't solve, and a little bit of overcoming regulations.
Well, I don't have any money.
Well, hey, all my money's in barrels right now. So
but I'll entertain you, that's something where I was going to ask if you think the aging would affect it being here, because it's nice and wide and open with you all have 27 acres here. Wind's going to hit it at all certain sides. So are you going to put that rick house here?
Yes, it'll sit behind the distillery, and it'll have an east to west orientation to it, trying to maximize sun exposure. The issues you were talking about, like us worrying about airflow and position in the rick house, those are problems I wish I had to solve. Like right now, it's hey, we've got these barrels. We're not slowing down production. Actually, we're at about 75% of production capacity right now, just because of that storage issue. So right now, it's hey, where can we put barrels and put some age on it legally?
Yeah,
right.
And once you get to that, because your stills right now, each still does a barrel a day, right?
Right now, our yields, we're making about 2.5 to 3 barrels a day right now.
Would you up that if you actually had a place to? I mean, I know you're at 75%, but would you even go more?
Yeah, what we would do is, so right now we do that on a 4-day schedule. So there's 3 days of the week we're not even running the still really. So that's, that will add that capacity when our storage issue kind of rights itself.
That's crazy to me, because we've talked to people in the past about craft distilling and the issues that people have. It's either, some people are going to other companies, if you think about MGP or Castle and Key, and actually kind of doing the mash bill through them, having them contract distill it, age it there, and they're kind of the NDP putting the final product out.
Sure.
But it's like, here you guys are. It's already tougher because grain costs more for you guys.
Oh, absolutely. We're a cash hog. Yeah.
All that stuff's going on. And now you're like, well, shoot, I got no place to put it. It's like I could distill all day. I love distilling.
Right.
But I can't actually, and you think about where you guys are even now, and how much of a presence you have in Middle Tennessee,
right? That
almost has to be a little bit frustrating, because you're like, I could see where my company could go, and just like everything, whiskey is such a slow play.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you think as a distiller, you think in terms of decades. I mean, and that's just the industry that we're in, but. We kind of factored that in when we were coming up with our business plan. We knew that was going to be an issue, and we worked on cultivating some of those relationships on barrel storage on the front end. So it's just as a new distillery, and like I said, we're being family funded. We're a lot of those issues as we grow and as we release whiskey, we'll be able to solve a lot of those problems as cash flow gets better and revenue. So, we definitely factored that in as we were building our business plan.
Your brother's gonna get his ass in gear. That's all I'm saying.
There's building some houses.
There's nothing that's out there right now. Like at least get the foundation down.
And that's another thing. There's not a lot of companies in the country that build rick houses.
Oh, I know. I was talking to somebody about there's 2.
Yeah, there's 2. And actually, traditionally, there's been 1, out of Bardstown. So, we're working with another company out of Louisville who's a new player in the industry, but very aggressive and kind of fits our price point. And so, we're working with them right now to come up with some design and things like that. When we build our rick house, we're a little different here. We want to incorporate some things attached to the rick house that are non-traditional, like an extra tasting room and some things like that, some other storage issues. So
a stage.
Yeah, well, no, we won't do. Maybe, I don't know.
Coming to you live from the rick house stage.
That's something we would do, but yeah.
It is one of the things that I didn't mention. I should have started off in the beginning, but I mean, you do have the best hair in the whiskey game, and
well, I don't know about that.
Lee has rock star hair. It's like that Willie Nelson braid.
I used to not look all crazy like this when I kind of did this once I got you couldn't do this in the financial services industry. Sit down across across somebody, they look at you like you're crazy.
Well, no, I have this beard right
Yes.
now. It's because I'm not client facing at the moment. And once I have a meeting, I've had about a good 2-3 months where I haven't had to go out and do any business travel. My wife is just waiting for the day where I have to go.
Well, you have a Blackbeard pirate style of beard, so it's very impressive. You're talking about my hair, so
No, I mean, please do.
I think it's impressive, man.
Zeke's mustache is just scary.
Right.
But he talks about a time where he used to be able to see my chin. And I said, I'm fat. You don't want to see my chin. That's why I have the beard. The beard is there to hide.
Yeah. Well, it looks good.
Yeah, well, thank you. So's your hair.
Thanks.
But so that is awesome. I mean, as far as what you guys are doing, there's a lot of great stuff down on the horizon. How long do you think it'll be until that actually happens?
So this year when we put almost 400 barrels back this year. So once those barrels become mature and we get those to market, that's when we really anticipate a change with the distillery. So, that's, I'd say 4 years from now, but it gets better every year. As we start releasing our own juice, things get better. We built our business plan on releasing so many cases per year. And so until we get there, we're not implementing our full business plan. But every year as we release more of our own spirit, things get drastically better. So, and we're doing great right now. We're ahead of everything we forecasted.
You can tell. I mean, just by sitting here, when you come in there, you're like, oh, these guys are doing okay.
We've been very fortunate with our tourism and a lot of things like that to help us offset some of the pain. So it's been,
It's just nowadays, right, with cell phones and immediate gratification, and you're like, I just want it to happen now, right?
Well, and that's one thing that you have to talking about thinking in terms of decades. Like, as a distiller, that's the frustration, but it's also it's the hallmark of doing something right. Anything you're going to put, pour your heart and soul into, and put in a 53-gallon barrel, I think part of what makes the mystique of whiskey is just the process that it undergoes to get into that bottle. I mean, it takes time to do that, and so you can't rush time. At the end of the day, you don't want to rush time because time and oxygen and all the rest of the stuff we all know works on that whiskey to make it what it is.
No, and that's a great point.
Sure.
Speaking of which, we keep talking about whiskey. You have 2 bottles on the table.
Yeah, no doubt.
You might as well tell me what's in these, because I don't necessarily know what's in these right now. One I know is a rye.
Sure.
The other one I have no idea what the hell it is.
Yeah, and it's a little different. I'll explain it to you. So the rye, this is the one we're talking about. It's just about to turn 3 years old. I haven't tried it in a while, so we're kind of getting a glimpse of what it's looking like at 3 years old. So the mash bill on this rye, it's 55% rye, 30% corn, and 15% barley malt. And like I was saying, we put an emphasis on our barley malt. We use 15% on everything going to barrel. It's actually a toasted style malt, so it has a lot of character, even in its white dog form. I feel like you can pick up some of that in this 3-year-old rye. It's still young, but I'm really happy where it's at, and I'm happy in the direction it's going.
Rye is one of those things that you don't necessarily need to have an 8, 9, 10-year rye. I mean,
absolutely.
There are some great 8, 9, 10-year ryes, but it's almost like that grain matures a little bit faster.
It does. We kind of see that it gets faster extraction out of the barrel, also picks up quicker oxidation. And, we kind of look at it as we're not going to live or die by our rye. I'm not going to release it unless I can stand behind it. By the time this gets to fourth quarter, I feel confident that we'll be happy to release it here locally.
Well, and the crazy thing too is Tennessee, Kentucky, we talk about all the similarities.
Sure.
It's one of the only places in the country where you could have a 60, 70 degree day in January,
no
but
doubt.
You could also have 110 days in the summer that drop down to rogue 50, 60 degree days. And
yes, which is nothing but beneficial for what we're doing.
Now, the funny thing about this is I almost had a little bit of maple on it out of the bottle.
Absolutely.
But then when I put it in the Glencairn,
let it breathe.
Not there.
It's not there. I think it's there. It's just it's not as intense as it was coming out when we first uncorked that. I get a lot of cinnamon almost kind of like a red hot.
No, and I'm nosing it for a good minute because it's like a cinnamon malt. I definitely get the malt on the nose.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's you can almost. It's one of those things where you kind of question, like, is this youth? But then once you know the mash bill and you know it's malt,
sure,
because it's not off-putting. It's like that green citrusy. Yes. But it's really the malt. It's once you hone in on it.
Yeah, you really pick up on that, and we kind of consider this Southern style rye. Traditionally, you didn't find a lot of rye whiskey in the South. It was Pennsylvania, Maryland, Northern Virginia, areas like that. So we use 55% of it. We feel like it's a softer rye. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the malt, I know a lot of people. We had just interviewed Greg Metz a couple weeks ago, and Old Elk. And they put in more malt to give a smoother profile. Mm-hmm. Is that one of those things that not only for just, as you were talking about, what you use it for, but it's also a good mellowing agent to make it a little bit like the first sip I have of this, it's like you get the spiciness of the rye, but you get a smoothness that's going down as well. And it's very well balanced in the sense that you have the spiciness, but
sure.
I think you told me this one was 108 proof.
Yeah, entry proof in the barrel is 110. So last time we proofed this, it was about 108 coming out right now at 3 years old.
It's nice because it's heat, like it's warmth in the chest, but it's not overbearing.
No.
I definitely get that cinnamon. There's nothing young tasting about it at all.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's why I'm really happy about where it's at. And I do see what you mean about that complexity. I mean, I think malt adds that. It gives another dimension to it. And that's one reason, for me, grain bills were just a matter of preference. There wasn't that much, I mean, it sounds bad, but there wasn't that much thought process going into it. It's like, hey, what, as a distiller and a consumer, what do I like? So you're going to distill what you like. And so that really drove a lot of our grain bills was, hey, in that category, what do we like? And so that's kind of what we did.
And I hate using the term cinnamon red hot just because I don't want people to think it's Fireball.
No, yeah, right.
And that would almost be giving it a disservice because it's nothing like Fireball.
Sure.
But it's got that, it's really nice and spicy. It does have a cinnamon red hot.
It does
quality to it,
with a sweetness,
but it's not
there.
Artificial.
No.
And that's, I think, the difference is, right? Like one is going to taste more artificial.
Yes.
This one is almost like if you were to take a cinnamon stick.
Sure.
Don't think about like fake processed shit.
Yeah.
If you were to take a cinnamon stick and dip that in a in a whiskey and you're making a cocktail.
Sure.
It's like the good parts of it.
Right.
And it's
not a negative connotation. It's a heat and a sweetness on the back end. Yeah. I see that completely.
But I do, the biggest note I do get from it is cinnamon. It's damn good though. It's cinnamon. I get a little bit of that malt in there in the barley.
Yeah.
In the middle. Mm-hmm. And then the finish, it's not, I'm not getting any citrus, no youth. It's just that nice, smooth burn at the very end. Well, not a burn, but a smooth warmth.
Yeah, exactly. It's a clean finish to me. So I'm very happy where it's at for sure.
Oh, it is. If this is how it is, I can't wait to see what it's going to be like through another summer.
Well, thank you.
That is really, really good. When you put this out, have you thought about pricing or anything like that fun stuff, or is that a conversation for us to have in the fall?
Well, it's probably better having the fall. But I address it. My CFO would say, something different than I'd probably say.
Is that the wife or is that the
no? It's actually my uncle, and that's not a joke. but he was a corporate CFO, so yeah, he's not a fly by the seat of his pants kind of guy. He's a professional. But yeah, we haven't really discussed it in detail, but I would say around that 60 to 65. If I was guessing right now,
which is an amazing price for a craft, and the thing that I have to at least applaud, I see more and more distilleries in Middle Tennessee that are really pushing their craft to 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
or 3, 4, 5 years. So,
Sure.
so the rye is coming out at 3 years. The sour mash is going to come out at 4. The bourbon's going to come out at 5, and it goes back to the whole theme you were saying, and I really love. I was kind of trying to nudge you there, and you took the bait without even knowing I was doing it, but. All that stuff about we could do it today. We could
absolutely.
ramp up a bunch of stuff today. I could get a bigger still. I could do this.
Yeah.
But it's all going to take time.
It does.
And you
take
don't
time.
want to rush it.
You can't rush it. And I think at the end of the day, everybody who's, whether you call it craft or small batch, whatever you want to call it, I think we all want to make a big boy style spirit at the small batch scale. I mean, there's a lot of guys running continuous. I mean, we do everything batch here, very traditional. But at the end of the day, we want to make something that's comparable to the big boys, just on a small scale.
Yeah. What is in that other bottle?
So the other bottle is very interesting. So there's 1 month of the year that we play around here. It's usually in February. Everything else, it's Groundhog's Day, ABC, repeat, ABC, repeat. So during the month of usually February, we play around with alternative grain bills. So one whiskey that I really like, I love all kinds of whiskeys. I mean, whether it's Scotch or Irish or Japanese whiskeys, I can find something to appreciate in almost every whiskey. But I really like Irish whiskey for a bunch of different reasons. So this is actually, this is an Irish style whiskey, if you could say that. So traditionally, Irish whiskeys have been malted barley. Sometimes it would be a percentage malted, a percentage unmalted. So Williamson County used to be the largest producer of wheat in the state back in the mid and late 1800s. So we took this grain bill would be 40% malted wheat, 60% unmalted wheat in an Irish style with that high malt content. And then we triple distilled it in the Irish style. So it came off the still over 180 proof. So it was really high. We brought it down to 110 and put it in a barrel. And this is actually turned 2 years old last month. So, and this is actually has a little. It's been in a rum cask for about 6 months. We're playing around with this whiskey right now. We've got about 40 barrels of it. We do all kind of crazy stuff with it. We got some of it in Cabernet barrels, some of it in rum barrels. It's a 2-year-old triple distilled wheat whiskey. You can't call it a wheat whiskey because it came off the still more than 160 proof. So,
well, you wink at me if you have some of that 180 clear stuff like lying around somewhere because. I know you can't legally tell me if you do, but...
No. We have none of that laying around.
I'm just joking. We were joking about moonshiners before we got on. That's some of that stuff that'll...
Oh, absolutely.
That'll make your eyes cross. That 180.
We get that question a lot here. What's the difference between white whiskey and moonshine? We tell folks, hell, moonshine is untaxed liquor. That's the definition.
That's the only difference.
You can make out anything.
I do.
You could tell it was distilled cleanly, and we call it, whether it's a high proof or clean. It came off the still very clean. Very interesting on the nose. You can get that it was distilled at a high proof. You get the alcohol on it, but it did go in the barrel entry on it was 110. We brought it down to 110 for barrel entry.
No, I mean it's a little astringent, but it's not over. No, it's not. It's nothing like I could tell.
And it's only 2 years old.
I definitely can notice the rum in there as well. I get a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a sweet heat on the nose.
Sure.
I know people are going to say that's the worst note I've ever got.
It's a very interesting whiskey. It's probably unlike anything you've had.
At the end of the day, though, you all are having fun.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, if we were to just sit there and do the same thing over and over,
sure,
you never know when you're going to have some dumb luck and stumble on something and say, maybe this is something we should do outside of February, and you'll only know that if you...
Right. I mean, and for us, we have our core products that we're going to build our business around, and that's our Tennessee whiskey and our bourbon. And these are things that will end up being gift shop exclusive kind of stuff. Have a limited presence here locally. We do like to play around with alternative grain bills, and a lot of times the guys will come up with something, and we'll run it through the still and see what happens. And it's part of, I think, as a distiller, if you have a passion for it, you want to see what you can distill. It's and what it's going to be like when you do that.
Next February, we're running a Dad's Drinking Bourbon Mash.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'll let you design it.
This is really, really, really good, though.
It is good.
And
It's surprisingly good. Yeah.
Are you going to let it sit there? How long are you going to let it all sit?
So we'll probably, I want to at least go 3 years. So it's 2 years. It turned 2 years in February. So we'll probably release it St. Patrick's Day of 2020.
I love it because I think it's a little rough around the edges right now, but you see where
you can see where it's going. Absolutely. And so we've got enough of it to let some of it go longer, and it'd be interesting to see how long it could go.
And by no means is this supposed to be a conversation where I'm like being critical on this. It's like, but you can tell it's got really interesting notes to it.
It does,
because you don't see a lot of Irish whiskey that gets finished in casks.
Yes. Jameson's doing some of the Caskmates kind of stuff,
But it's more of a stout.
Traditionally, exactly. It's more beer finishes and things like that.
But this is super, super, super interesting.
It's been a labor of love as far as, it's hard to triple distill something. We run it through the still once and gather a lot of low wines, and then we run it through the still another 2 times. So it's definitely a more laborious process.
Well, and it works well too because your still is a Scotch style still.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's a Scottish swan neck. Yeah, pot still.
That's exactly what you should be doing on a February in that thing, right?
Absolutely. We run that Scottish style swan neck still, so we felt like doing an Irish style or something in the vein of from the UK style whiskey would be appropriate. And obviously the Irish run pot stills, swan neck pot stills as well.
It's funny. I love Irish whiskey. Zeke doesn't love as much stuff that doesn't stay in the States.
Sure.
But, and I actually like Scotch too. But
I do too.
I think it's Irish whiskey is one of those. If you like American whiskey and you really like American whiskey, Irish whiskey almost has the best parts of Irish Scotch. But without the peat.
I think and that's why I like it as well. If you're a distiller, you've got to pay homage back to Scotland and Ireland. And they had that debate who was the first to distill whiskey. The oldest distillery in the world is Bushmills up in Northern Ireland. But I agree with that. And to me, I like I like a lot of the notes in Irish whiskey. And I've read recently that a lot of Irish whiskey guys don't like the word smooth or attributed to their whiskey because people and today's consumers want bite or they want some edges or things like that or complexity. But to me, what the hallmarks of that Irish whiskey is that they're smooth and approachable, and that's what I like about them as well.
Well, and it's funny because it goes into a whole thing. I think a lot of times we can get obsessed with proof.
Yes.
And I do like high proof whiskey.
Yes.
But if I'm drinking high proof whiskey, I'm good for 1 or 2.
Sure.
And then I'm done.
Right.
But sometimes you need something that's 80 proof, 90 proof that you're going to sit there and say you're working.
Yes.
And you're working late. Can't be pounding 126 proof,
No, not if you're going to be productive. Right,
yeah.
right.
So if I want to sit there and I'm having a few, okay,
sure.
Now I can sit down, I can pour something that's a little bit less proof.
Yeah.
And get some work done.
I mean, I think 80 proofs, we're going to, probably our standard bottlings will be 90 proof. That's standard industry. I think that 80 proofs are underrated. They're easy, they're sippable. You don't have to add water or ice to them. So a lot of people ask us I appreciate high proof whiskey as well, barrel strength, things like that. I always want to try anybody's cask strength kind of stuff. But a lot of times I had somebody tell me that the reason they like 90 proof, 100 proof, 86, whatever it is they would rather have the distiller add the water to their preference versus them. And so there may be something to be said with that. I don't really know. Yeah.
But when people do special releases, it's funny because I kind of say like, all right, like say Four Roses limited edition small batch and it's 107 proof or 105 proof, whatever it is. Somebody adds water or says like, I would rather... Well, it's like, okay, well, the distiller already said this 107 proof is where it should be.
Sure, absolutely. That's a sweet spot for that whiskey in their opinion, in the distiller's opinion, yeah.
So if you're going to put out a product like that, and then a lot of times I think, it's like I was talking to another distiller, they're like, we proofed everything at 90 because we thought that's what you should do. Like we just thought you should get a proof and pick it and stick with it.
Sure.
And they don't realize like single barrels and things like that. It's like, okay, and they have since realized that.
Sure.
But it's now one of those things where it's like you can do a single barrel where you have something at 112 proof because it's really good, but then the next one it's 98.
Let the barrel tell you where the proof needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, we've done that on some of our single barrel releases. We'll get a panel and do a blind test of different proof points on that single barrel, and with some guys that are educated palates, and whatever that consensus is, we'll release it at that proof. You know, and that's we put everything. What I like, as far as my opinion, you know, we put everything in at 110 proof. So it's a lower barrel entry proof. So our cask strengths will probably tend to be 108 to 115 proof, whatever that swing is, depending on location. So I think they'll be approachable as cask strengths.
Well, and you talk about being a cash cow.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things about being a cash cow.
It's going in at low entry proof is going to cost you more money. Yeah. And the other thing is you guys are a sweet mash opposed to a sour mash. So you're cleaning out that still after every run.
Every run. We start from scratch. We are a sweet mash. There's only a handful of us, I think, in the industry doing a sweet mash. You know, and we've got our own reasons for doing that. But, we'll see how that turns out. But it's something we've been committed to since day one. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. So let's get to the most important thing. I know people have been sitting here and listening to us talk and learning more about Lee and the distillery, and that has been awesome. But there's an event that we are doing together on Saturday. Mm-hmm. It's the Whiskey Warmer down at West Haven in Franklin, Tennessee.
Sure.
And I gave Lee a call, and one of the reasons we're down here is we've been meaning to come down and sit with Lee for about 2 years.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that we said we would love to partner up, and we being the Dad's Drinker Bourbon, we'd love to partner up with a local distillery and do something that hasn't been done before.
Sure.
I don't think you all have ever put out a single barrel cask strength Colonel Hunters, have you?
No, we have not. Yeah.
And it might be, if you're going with the theme of Whiskey Warmer, you are warming up from the winter. What better way to stay warm than with a cask strength whiskey, right?
Absolutely.
This is going to be a little bit fun. I think what we'll do, there's going to be a big Dad's Drinking Bourbon banner. We're going to be podcasting from the event. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we would say is, and we don't want to confuse everybody with going to the Leiper's Fork table because you will have your own whiskey there.
Sure.
We're going to have 3 bottles by us at the Dad's Drinking Bourbon table.
Yes.
We want people to come over to our table, and I will say Lee is going to be very generous about what he is bringing, but the sooner you come to our table, the better. We want you guys to sample from the different barrel picks, and then what we want you to do is, we'll get a fishbowl or something you could put your vote in. And we want to get all your votes, and we're going to tally it up. And then we'll do it right. We'll put a nice sticker on it that talks about Whiskey Warmer or whatever we decide we're going to do. But it will be the official Whiskey Warmer bottle.
Absolutely. I think that'll be an interesting project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be official Whiskey Warmer bottle, not sanctioned by Whiskey Warmer, because we're all just doing it.
Right.
But then what we'll do is our friends at Carruthers are helping to sponsor the event. So some will be at Carruthers, some will be here at the Leiper's Fork Distillery.
Sure.
There will be multiple places where you can go get it, which is very important because we want you to come out here to Leiper's Fork. We know that some of you might just be in town for the weekend and you don't have a whole bunch of time. So there's going to be multiple places you can get it. We know we love the guys down at Barrels and Brews, so always happy to do something with them. But we thank you.
Man, thank you. Thanks, John. I really appreciate you having me on for sure.
Well, no, I'm not kicking you off yet. I'm saying thank you for the single barrel.
Oh, absolutely.
That is going to be a hell of a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I haven't heard of a place where you can go as a just visiting a tasting where you've got hundreds of people. And, it'll be limited. We'll only have so much in a bottle. But take a consensus of what expression they like best out of the 3 barrels and, let the guests select the barrels, which could be a dangerous thing, but it should be fun.
And you said the proofs in these, there are one's like 115 proof, but one's even up in the 120s.
Sure.
Right?
They proofs range from about 125 down to about 115.
That is going to be fun. So the suitor, don't mess your palate up. Don't go to other, unless you go to the Leiper's Fork table first, always hit them up. Don't mess your palate up first. Don't go have 20 samples before you come over. We want fresh palates. We want you to be in a good mindset, and we want you to help us pick a barrel.
And it won't last long.
It won't.
Yeah.
Whiskey Warmer starts at 6. I would say you want to hit our table by 6 and 7. I think you all should get there early and go see Lee, because you're going to be there, right?
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. I'm going to be probably over by you guys, or I'm going to be going back and forth between our table, saying hey to John, just kind of mingling around.
Well, that's good. We can't wait.
Yeah.
Lee, thank you so much for coming on. I wholeheartedly mean this. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. I love your own distillate and where that is going. So whenever, I know sometimes you haven't had that rye in a couple of years, or probably test it quarterly or monthly, but I know sometimes it's one of those things where you sit there and go, man, I wonder how this is. And it is really, really good.
Well, thank you.
There's amazing stuff happening down here at Leiper's Fork, Tennessee. And I hope people just come out to this distillery, not only because you're great people and you have a great product, but it's gorgeous.
Well, thank you, John.
They're hiring for weddings and all sorts of. Have your wedding out at Leiper's Fork Distillery.
Don't say that.
Where else can the folks find you? So they can find you here.
We're Instagram's LF Distillery, and then we're on Facebook, Leiper's Fork Distillery on Facebook, leipersforkdistillery.com. So yeah, please check us out and please come by. Absolutely.
Come down. Lee's here most days, so come down and see him. You can find us on Instagram at Dad's Drinking Bourbon, Facebook at Dad's Drinking Bourbon, Twitter at Bourbon Dads. Join our private Facebook group. It's closed. Answer a couple questions. We'll let you in. There's about 3,000 people in there right now that are all talking whiskey. It's good times. Please go find us on your favorite podcast app, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Podknife, whatever it is. Please leave us an open and honest review. We would love to hear from you. You can find us in Nashville, Tennessee. Let us know if you're there. We'd love to have a pour with you sometime. Lee, thanks again.
Thank you, John.
Cheers.
Cheers. Appreciate that.